At a crowded airport, a young black woman rushed to catch the flight that could secure life-saving care for her sick mother. Every second mattered, but when she saw an elderly man collapse by the gate, clutching his chest as travelers walked past, she faced an impossible choice: help him and miss her only chance, or keep running. She knelt beside him without hesitation. What she didn't know was that he was a billionaire, and what happened after that moment changed both of their lives forever. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The airport was chaos: blinking monitors, crying toddlers, coffee spilling over plastic lids, voices echoing through announcements about delayed flights and gate changes. And Kayla James, 29, sharp-boned, tired-eyed, dressed in cheap business wear over a body that had slept too little and sacrificed too much, pushed through the crowd, gripping her mother's medical documents in one hand and her second-hand tote in the other, her boarding pass fluttering between her teeth as she searched desperately for Gate C-17, the final step in a 6-month ordeal to secure her dementia-stricken mother a place at the prestigious Belmont Center in Atlanta, a facility that only offered walk-in interviews and only one opening for low-income care. And this flight, this 4:22 p.m. flight, was her only chance to make it in time, and the only thing standing between her and complete collapse after 2 years of unpaid caregiving, juggling food service shifts, being evicted twice, and abandoning her dream of becoming a nurse when tuition ran dry, and her hands blistered from washing strangers' dishes instead of taking patients' pulses. But just as she turned the corner past Hudson News, a sound cut through the din like a blade. An old man's guttural gasp, a body crumpling to the floor, and Kayla stopped, instincts flaring like sirens as others walked faster, turned away, or snapped photos, because the old man, maybe 70, maybe 80, white hair, sweat beading across a wrinkled brow, had collapsed by the seats, hand clutching his chest, eyes wide with that unmistakable look of mortal terror, and Kayla, without thinking, dropped everything, rushed to him, fell to her knees, murmured, "Sir? Sir, stay with me, okay?" As she tilted his head, checked his pulse, braced his head with her scarf, tore open his shirt buttons, whispered that help was coming even when no one else stopped. No employee, no traveler, not even the security guard 20 feet away who only radioed in and kept walking. Because in that moment, Kayla wasn't late, wasn't scared, wasn't even herself. She was the nurse she once dreamed of becoming. And as the man's chest heaved, her fingers found the radial pulse, weak and thready, and she muttered signs of myocardial infarction under her breath, calling for aspirin, for a defibrillator, anything, while the loudspeaker echoed, "Final boarding call for Flight 223 to Atlanta." And Kayla glanced at the clock, 4:17, and knew in her bones that saving this man's life meant missing everything she'd worked for the facility. The chance to get her mother out of that neglectful group home where roaches scurried under peeling floors and aides ignored screams at night, but she stayed, applying compressions when his eyes rolled back, shouting for help, weeping when she cracked a rib but kept going because broken ribs heal but dead hearts don't. And when the paramedics finally thundered in with a stretcher, taking over, they told her she'd done everything right. She'd saved his life. She'd probably given him another 20 years. But by the time she stood, dizzy, shaking, and picked up her dropped belongings, her gate was closed, the jet bridge retracted, and her chance, her one real chance, was gone, and she sank into the seat he'd fallen from, clutching the paper boarding pass like it could reverse time, until a hand touched her shoulder, and she looked up into the face of a woman, nurse, mid-30s, kind eyes, who'd been dispatched with the paramedics, and whispered, "He asked your name before he passed out again, said, 'Don't let her disappear.'" And Kayla, blinking in confusion, muttered her name, unsure why it mattered, and left the airport hollowed out, defeated, back to a borrowed apartment where her mother stared out the window, muttering her dead husband's name like a mantra. And Kayla cried into the night, wondering if kindness had cost her everything, unaware that the man she saved was Albert Grayson, the Albert Grayson, real estate baron, silent philanthropist, founder of Grayson Memorial Hospital, who'd isolated himself after his wife died of heart failure alone in a train station because no one stopped to help her, who hadn't spoken a kind word in years, who had everything money could buy, but nothing that could replace a broken soul. Until a stranger knelt beside him and gave him breath when the world walked by. And when he awoke in the ICU, tubes down his throat, he rasped, "The girl, black girl, airport, find her." And when the nurse asked why, he said, "She's the only person who didn't want anything from me." And that was enough to set a search in motion. Private investigators, social media, airport security logs, and 2 days later, as Kayla was folding laundry for a neighbor to earn bus fare, a suited man approached her door with a letter in hand, gold-embossed seal, and said, "Miss James, Mr. Grayson would like to speak with you." And everything changed. Not all at once, not like a fairy tale, but in seismic shifts. Because the letter didn't just thank her, it offered her a paid, full scholarship to return to nursing school, a full-time care suite at Belmont for her mother starting immediately, and a guaranteed position at Grayson Memorial upon graduation. And when she called to ask why, to ask if he was sure, Albert's voice, raspy but resolute, said, "Because your courage reminded me of what my money never could buy." And Kayla wept, not because of the money, not because of the job, but because someone saw her, really saw her, for the first time in years, not as a burden, not as a broke caretaker, but as a woman who knelt beside a dying man and gave up her own lifeline. And that night, she booked a new ticket, not to escape, but to arrive. This time, not as a desperate daughter, but as a student again, a nurse again, a woman building something real from the ashes of what life tried to burn away. And when she walked into Grayson Memorial on her first day, scrub top freshly pressed, ID badge clipped to her heart, Albert was there in the lobby in a wheelchair, clapping with misted eyes, whispering, "Told you I'd stay with you too." And every patient Kayla cared for after that carried a piece of that moment, because she never forgot what it meant to stop for someone when no one else did. And years later, when a young man in a hoodie collapsed near her subway stop and everyone crossed the street, Kayla dropped her groceries, knelt in the rain, and whispered again, "Stay with me." Because kindness, when multiplied, doesn't just save one life, it rewrites destinies.